Ladies and gentlemen,
They say the next big thing is
the Steve Warnicki Show.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for being with us. I am Steve Warnicki. I appreciate everybody's being here yet again on the Steve Warnicki Show. We're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and at stevewarnicki.com. I'm a retired Denver police sergeant, 15 years on the job. I've left and am trying to fight for the police officers and educate the public. I want the job of police officer to be better for the men and women out there doing the job. And I have such an opportunity today to stand up for an officer after hearing a story that hit close to home for me. KMGH Channel 7 in Denver and Tony Kovaleski, who's their investigative reporter, broke a story about a Denver police detective who was accusing the current mayor of Denver, Michael Hancock, of sexual harassment while she was assigned to his security detail back in 2011 and 2012. KMGH has the full story. They aired it last night, the 27th at 10 p.m. Mountain Time. I think they did an earlier version also, but the main story at 10 p.m. Mountain Time. And from that story and Tony Kovaleski's work, there's some things that were uncovered about Mayor Hancock's decision-making and actions back in 2011 and 2012. So there were some text messages exchanged, and Detective Leslie Branchwise, who is the officer who was making the accusation of sexual harassment against the mayor, had some texts which have yet to be contested by the city or the mayor, and she showed them to the news, and they're on the story if you'd like to see them. And I'll just give you a brief recap so you understand what we're talking about here and the severity of the texts and where and what was said. So the first of the texts was, quote, "So I just watched this story on women taking pole dancing classes. Have you ever taken one? Why do women take the course? If not, have you ever considered taking one, and why? Your thoughts?" Branchwise said she did not respond, but the mayor kept going, writing, quote, "Be careful, I'm curious, LOL." Another time, Detective Branchwise received a text, said, "Loved the short do. You made it hard on a brother to keep it correct every day." In another text, he mentioned having spotted her on television in the crowd at a Denver Nuggets game. The text read, quote, "Enjoy, you better bring 'em some luck. You look sexy in all that black." And so Tony Kovaleski sits down with Mayor Michael Hancock and gets his response. And he apologizes and he talks about how, he made a mistake and that he's human and that he wants to accept responsibility. And I'll play you just a moment of that right now.
I'm here, Tony, tonight to apologize. When something happens, when you make a mistake, a lot of how you're going to be judged is by how you respond. And I'm a person who leans in, accept responsibility, learn from it, and get better. This was a mistake. I'm human. I make mistakes. I was too familiar. I was too casual. And those text exchanges were inappropriate and unprofessional.
Here you have the famous "giveth while I taketh away." You know what I mean? I'm sorry. I apologize. I made a mistake. I'm human. America's very forgiving, I think. You hear these things and you think, oh, he's apologizing, he's accepting responsibility. That is what we want to hear in a leader. Everybody makes mistakes. It's great. It's great, 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 great. But then he also taketh away. Things were too familiar, too casual. Okay. So does that make sexual advances toward an employee better? Or are those just mitigation in your mind? Because office etiquette, especially in a mayoral office of a major city, I would think should be professional. And by the way, does the apology count less because you had to? Because you had no other option? Because you were caught red-handed with your hand in the cookie jar? What other course of action could he have taken here but to apologize, but to take responsibility? It was the only way of saving his butt. And I'm sure he's thinking, if people will just accept my apology, we can just move on from this and it'll be over with. But that doesn't make your apology an apology. When we're only apologizing because we got caught red-handed, well, I think everybody needs to be asking themselves, would he have apologized otherwise? In another remark from the Channel 7 story from the mayor, Hancock said he and his security detail became very close, and he did not realize he crossed a line with his texts to Branchwise. So I just want to ask you something. How, as a mayor, is that appropriate? To go, oh, you know what? And he said this later on too. I wish you would have come forward. I wish I'd have known. I wish I'd have known 6 years ago. 6 years ago when this happened, everybody. I wish I would have known this was inappropriate and that she did not like this. Is that really taking responsibility? I ask you, is it? It doesn't feel like it. That the kind of decision process that you want to go on at top levels of city government? He goes on to say, Mayor Hancock does, quote, spending as much time with my security detail as I do, we laugh, we tease, we joke. It's not an excuse for me blurring the lines here. I'm not making an excuse, but the walls come down, and that's unfortunate, Hancock said. That was not okay. Also, let's pick apart this answer like a Rubik's Cube, because the things that stand out in your mind are the overall tone of this is, well, look, we spend a lot of time together. We become really close. Things get a little casual. My bad. It's not acceptable. This is on me. But let's really look at what this says. That in the climate in the mayor's office, amongst his security detail, if you spend enough time with him, working with him, it's okay to laugh and tease each other and joke, and walls come down. What I think of as unprofessional work environment. And that's unfortunate, he said. You could still be close with the people that you work day in and day out with without teasing them, sending them questions about pole dancing, telling everybody they look sexy, making people uncomfortable, making inappropriate jokes. All of that has no place, especially in a mayor's office. I mean, that's not tolerated at, whatever insurance firm down the road. Why would this be okay in a major city's mayor's office? Mayor Hancock goes on to apologize to his wife and children. So he's married. I think another aggravator here that this isn't a single mayor that was, trying to tactfully date perhaps somebody that he happened to be in close quarters with because he worked together. Although there's better ways to do that, and we'll discuss that in a minute. Here's a married guy with kids hitting on his security team. That's what it is. It's Bill Clinton-esque behavior, right? It's the old horn dog in the top office. You know what I'm saying? I mean, say what you will about George Bush Jr., say what you will about Barack Obama, but those guys weren't out horning it up, were they? Because they understood the importance and the power and the prestige and the trust that had been given to them because of their office. So they don't act like that. Or you could be like Slick Willie, getting your Big Macs, wolfing down your Big Macs with interns under the desk. I mean, who do we want to elect to represent us? So I don't like the overall tone of Mayor Hancock's. I think it giveth and it taketh away a little bit. And also important to note here that he only apologized and came forward when he had no other choice. And you know as well as I do that the mayor has a huge legal team of lawyers and advisors who were advising him. And most likely, in my mind, the only advice they could have given him was, you've got no option here other than to just fall on the sword, apologize, and try to get over it. I'm sorry. Won't happen again. And, prep him on his what his response is going to be. We want people to hear the words, mistake, apologize, human, not perfect, unacceptable. But we also want you to, you got to reiterate how you serve this community, which he did, how you give your best to this community, how you're not that kind of man, which all of those he did also. And be sure to be clear, letter of the law, not spirit of the law, that technically what you did wasn't harassment because she never told you to stop. So technically you didn't break any laws. We're going to get back to all this. There are mitigating circumstances here for the mayor, though. I do think there are a few. The tone of his text messages were certainly inappropriate, but it didn't rise. He didn't Bill Cosby anybody. Okay. His actions certainly didn't rise to the level of Harvey Weinstein. He didn't brag about grabbing girls by the right? Certainly, there have been more egregious examples of sexual misconduct than this. But is this the kind of behavior and decision making we want from our leaders? Are there people out there that respect the position that wouldn't abuse it in such a way? Isn't this what the whole Me Too movement is about? Is putting a stop to all of this. Another extenuating circumstance for the mayor. Well, it's 6 years later. All right. Well, it was 6 years ago, and he makes sure to throw that in a few times. It's 6 years ago. The thought being like, it's really old. I'm a better person now. That was a long time ago. But I think there are extenuating circumstances for Detective Leslie Branchwise not coming forward. She's terrified. Listen, I can tell you after having worked in a police department, if something like that would have happened to me, I'd have been absolutely mortified to come forward. Mortified. You worry about your job, you worry about retaliation, you worry about being fired, and even if they're smart enough not to fire you, who's to say you're not going to end up in the ID bureau free punching ID cards for the next 7 years? You know, that is a significant detraction on your career when you're out doing in an assignment that you like, and all of a sudden you're in the property bureau in the basement on graveyard shift for the next 6 years. I mean, those transfers are easy to take, and think about how much different your life would be if you hate going to work every day. Is it worth it? It's a terrifying thing. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to come forward with this. And I think from what I gather in the story, Detective Leslie Branchwise just really wanted people to know about it. It didn't sound to me like she wanted anything. Now, the mayor's seeking his third reelection term coming up here. So, what message are Coloradans going to send to the rest of the country and to women when this kind of behavior continues to be forgiven? You know, they used to tell us as police officers, you're held to a higher standard, boys and girls. And if you do something, the punishment is going to be more severe than if regular people had done it. And that's because of the amount of power and trust that we have in you. So shouldn't that apply to the mayor? Shouldn't that apply to anybody to whom the people have entrusted a great deal of authority and power? I mean, Branchwise says in this story, quote, if you are down here and your boss is up here and he's showering you with these inappropriate texts and sayings and making you feel uncomfortable, who do you tell if he's at the top? Right. Where do you go? It's the people that have to hold the mayor accountable. So I have more questions to ask. I have a lot more questions I want answered after hearing Tony Kovaleski's story. There was a mention that there was a $200,000 settlement with a mayoral aide, Wayne McDonald, around the time of this sexual harassment. Branchwise came forward to Mayor Hancock and said she was being harassed by this mayoral aide, Wayne McDonald. The mayor said, I got that information and acted quickly and fired McDonald. And then later, McDonald gets a settlement of $200,000 of taxpayer money. So I want to know, if he was guilty of sexual harassment, why on earth are we firing people with good cause and then giving them $200,000 to shut up? The people that live in Denver should be furious that somebody acted inappropriately. They were fired appropriately. And then for some reason, we just chuck a couple $100,000 at them of your money. Why? Does anybody else's antenna stand up and go, what the hell happened there? Now, let me play the last moment of Tony Kovaleski on KMGH Channel 7's story and what he says there at the end, standing at the anchor desk.
Clearly, a very emotional response from the mayor. Now, The culture inside the mayor's security detail led to a $200,000 settlement with the mayor's former aide. Weeks after attorneys for Detective Branch Wise showed the city those text messages, the city wrote her a $75,000 check, a settlement that never mentioned Mayor Hancock.
Now, he said weeks after attorneys for Detective Branch White showed the city those text messages, the city wrote her a $75,000 check, a settlement that never mentioned Mayor Hancock. Showed the city what messages? The messages from the mayoral aide or the messages involving the mayor? So that's another question we all should have. Because if somebody in the city saw messages like that from the mayor back at a time when it was more time appropriate, why was nothing done back then? I think you need to look at, and I talk about this when I dissect police cases, and I talk about this all the time, a totality of the circumstances. And I think it's important to look at everything here, and that includes the history of Mayor Michael Hancock, who was mayor-elect, was involved in some sort of prostitution scandal where they closed down a prostitution ring, and he may or may not have been associated with it. And to this day, it's the only media story I've ever read. I just read one of the final things from the Denver Post the other day when I was yesterday when I was looking at this. It's the only story I've ever heard of where they just went, we can't figure it out. We don't know what happened. Maybe one day we'll get to the bottom of this, but right now nobody knows. So, yeah, we just don't know. We find out the truth someday. We'll let you know. That is so unlike the media. That is so unlike America's media. Guys, this Lewinsky thing. We've hit a wall. Maybe someday something will surface. Let's get out of here. Right? Give me a break. So that happened. You got the mayor ultimately responsible for dragging out an investigation on two of Denver's highest ranking police officers for a year now. And so look at the overall climate that the mayor has created in Denver. You got a climate of fear where people, because this whole thing came from an anonymous letter, right? So you've got people that know and are terrified to speak up that they have to send an anonymous letter. You may hear the words anonymous letter and, well, this is total, right? But people are terrified. We're talking about their livelihoods and their jobs, and they are so scared to speak up in that town that they have to send anonymous letters so that the quality of their lives and jobs aren't affected. And I worked there. If I would have had something like this, I would have been also terrified and probably also would have written an anonymous letter, because the last thing I'm going to do is put my name to something like that and send it out into the world. And then when I'm re-alphabetizing our files in the basement, at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, go, well, okay, that was worth it. So you've got the fear portion of this overall climate that's created in the city of Denver. Now you have the do as I say, not as I do. And this goes back to my entire time on the police department. It always mattered who you were and how high you were. If you did something that was against the rules, but you were a certain person, it didn't really matter. It didn't matter. We can get away with it. But if you did something and it was against the rules and you weren't one of the elite, the executives, or one of the coveted protected people, then you know what? You're going to face the consequences. And that's just the way it was. That was the climate there. I think most cops would tell you that, so long as they're not terrified to talk to you. And now, so we have a climate of fear, a climate is do as I say, not as I do. And now we have this sexually inappropriate behavior modeled at the top. This is what happens when we hang out with people in groups. Things get a little, things get a little inappropriate here. The lines get blurred a little bit, according to the mayor. Leslie Branchwise says, quote, I was only employed in the mayor's security detail for less than a year, and pretty early on, between the mayor's aide just saying sexually explicit things to me in person and via text, and the mayor making inappropriate comments and sending me inappropriate texts, I knew that the unit wasn't a place for me. That was Leslie Branchwise. So I have an idea. Women aren't allowed in the mayoral detail. that highly coveted, awesome job that everybody wants because you get to go meet the most powerful people in Denver. You're responsible for executive protection. You get to go with the mayor. There's lots of overtime. It's a coveted and admired position, and it's very difficult to get. No, women, you can't handle it. Listen, we're guys over here. We're stuff. We got stuff going on. We're talking. We blur the lines a little bit on. We're cheating on each other. You know what I'm saying? Keep the women out of you. They're too fragile. It's the lines get blurred when they're here. You know what I mean? No, I don't know what you mean. This is the mayor's office. Anybody should be able to work there. It should be based on their skills and abilities. Woo! There's a thought, right? So let's do that. Let's do that. Because unless the message you want to send is, yeah, maybe women shouldn't be here. Listen, I can talk to you personally in my own career. There are times when I've worked with people that I was interested potentially in some sort of relationship with. It's going to happen in life, especially because you spend so much time at work. It's going to happen. You're going to work with somebody or have somebody above you or below you that you're interested in. But I can tell you personally that if any of those people were ever directly below me, I would never have even nicely or insinuated, asked for a date, nothing. It's just not appropriate to date your subordinate, period. Now, I've had people that moved on and were not under my direct supervision, and later on, then maybe it's at a different spot to say something, but you say something and you do it tactfully. You never hear anybody come forward and they go, I was sexually harassed. What happened? They go, well, Steve came up to me and he said, listen, I know that we work at the same organization. I'm not your direct boss anymore, but I just want to tell you that I'm interested in you. I don't know if you're available, but if you'd ever want to have dinner with me, that'd be great if you could call me because I think you're awesome and I want to get to know you better. Nobody's ever said that in a sexual harassment complaint. And then they go, okay, either, yeah, thanks, maybe I'll call you, or, oh, I'm sorry, I'm seeing somebody, or whatever. Do you know why nobody's ever said that? Because that's how gentlemen ask people out. They don't go, hey, baby, you been on some pole dancing, baby, huh? Been riding those poles? You grease yourself up, slide up and down the poles, maybe? Oh, girl, I saw you on TV. Keeping it rough. Making it hard for a brother to keep organized. Like, what? How about you just be tactful and respectful? Is that possible? Could he have said after she left the mayoral detail, hopefully it wasn't under those circumstances, hey, we're not working together anymore, but geez, granted, maybe, hopefully he's not married at this time, right? But, hey, I was really interested in you. I'd be interested to see where this goes. If you're ever interested, give me a call for coffee. Hey, thanks. You think Leslie Branchwise would be sitting in Tony Kovaleski's chair across from him with a camera otherwise? I think we need to readdress sexual harassment policies in America. Not the far ends of the spectrum that are clear, like have sex with me or you're fired. Those are duh. All right, those are ridiculous. I'm talking about the gray areas where here's where we are now. Technically, this doesn't rise to the level of sexual harassment because she never told me it was inappropriate. She never told me it bothered her. So technically, it's not okay. Is that right, attorneys? Right, counselors? All that the taxpayers are paying, you're paying attorneys to give me advice. Okay, taxpayers are doing that. Perfect. So that's what I should say. Because it is, right? Let's think about the logistics of this, though. How do you tell a boss, especially when he's in a person of extreme power and influence, like a mayor, hey, please don't text me, it's making me feel uncomfortable, without worried about you getting transferred? Well, F her, right? Get her out of here. Or, being ostracized by the rest of the group. It's up to the mayor. It's incumbent on the mayor to make an environment where that kind of thing is not tolerated. You can still be friends and chummy with everybody and not make things uncomfortable for people. We shouldn't have to legislate common sense. But we do need to have a discussion about what this looks like because it is difficult to address this. And I'm not saying that we should all live in a world where you can't at some point tell somebody that works in the same organization as you that you're interested in them, because that's okay. Lots of great, amazing relationships started with people that worked in the same organization, some even in as boss and subordinate. But if it's done tactfully, then as soon as the organization finds out or as soon as the relationship starts, get them out to where they're not each other's direct supervisor and let them stay in the organization potentially, or move them where they don't have to answer to one another. There's ways of doing it. And we can have that discussion, but is this it? Is this it? Well, the letter of the law was that she didn't tell me, and so I'm just now finding out 6 years later that this is uncomfortable for her, and so I'm sorry. So, is that where we want to leave this? Is that where the Me Too movement would be happy with us leaving this? No, it doesn't. You don't have to have much more information to know that this is poor judgment, poor decision making, along with a history of this kind of decision making from a mayor that's in charge of a big city. And you ask yourself, is the city better off now than when Mayor Michael Hancock was his first day in office? I mean, I have my answer to that. What's yours? It'll be interesting to see if the people of Denver hold this mayor to account. It really will be. Maybe his half taketh away and giveth apology is going to be enough. Maybe him entering some sort of sexual harassment course and pulling a Kevin Spacey and going, oh, I'm going to go take this class for a while, is enough for the people of Denver. Maybe holding everybody around you, including your aides, to stricter standards. Well, he did it, he's fired. But as long as I'm sorry, it's okay for me. So it's the do as I say, not as I do climate again. Maybe that's okay, an appropriate way for city leaders to govern. I guess, Colorado, you tell us, the rest of the world, what you believe is okay, because you are the ones responsible for deciding this. The rest of us will just be here waiting to hear if this kind of behavior is okay from people in positions of great power. I have my answer. Do you have yours? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm out of breath. Thank you for being with me. I am Steve Warnicki. Find more from me at stevewarnicki.com or online, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being with me.